Today, we're talking about a condition that affects millions of people, but a lot of them don't even know they have it. It's called insulin resistance. Think of it like a quiet warning bell, a really important signal our bodies send out long before bigger problems start.
So, let me ask you this. What if one of the best ways to get a heads up on a major health risk wasn't some complicated high-tech lab test, but something you could do at home, right now?
Well, it turns out a brand new analysis is suggesting just that. For millions of us, a simple tape measure could actually be a super powerful tool for spotting this silent condition early. Now, to really get why this is such a big deal, we need to zoom in on a specific group of people where this problem is really common, but, notoriously tough to catch. We're talking about polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. It affects about 1 in 10 women. And for them, insulin resistance is a huge piece of the puzzle, a key factor driving the condition. But it's often invisible, just flying completely under the radar. So why is it so invisible? Well, because the tests we have for it, the gold standard methods, are honestly a nightmare. They're super complex, they're expensive, and they're just not something you can do as a routine checkup. But that is exactly where this new research comes in. You see, scientists have been on the hunt for a simpler, more accessible warning signal, and it looks like they've finally found one. So here's what they did. They pulled together data from 9 different studies, looking at over 3,000 patients with PCOS. Their mission was to sift through all this information and find one simple, consistent physical measurement that could reliably tell them which of these patients also had insulin resistance. And they found it. A clear winner. The result was simple. Patients who had both PCOS and insulin resistance almost always had a greater waist-to-height ratio, or WHTR. And yep, it's literally as simple as it sounds. You just measure your waist, then divide that number by your height. And this, right here, is the breakthrough. We're talking about going from these complicated, expensive lab tests to a simple tape measure. I mean, this is a total game changer for making this kind of early screening available to basically everyone. Okay, so we've got this powerful new indicator, but what is it actually indicating? Let's take a second and break down what's really going on with this thing called insulin resistance. So, at its core, insulin resistance is basically a communication problem in your body. Your cells, especially in your muscles, fat, and liver, they start to kind of ignore the messages from a hormone called insulin. And because of that, they have a hard time taking sugar, or glucose, out of your blood to use for energy. Here's the easiest way to picture it. Think of insulin as the key. In a healthy body, that key fits perfectly into the locks on your cells, opening them up and letting sugar come inside to be used as fuel. But with insulin resistance, that lock starts to get, rusty. It gets stiff. The key just doesn't work as well. So what does your body do? Your pancreas starts pumping out more and more keys, tons of extra insulin, trying to force those rusty doors open. And that state of having way too much insulin in your system, that's called hyperinsulinemia. And this kicks off a pretty predictable chain of events. First, the cells get resistant. Then your pancreas goes into overdrive, making all that extra insulin. But that can't go on forever. Eventually, your pancreas just gets tired out. It can't keep up with the demand. And that's the final step. Your blood sugar starts to climb, and you've entered the stage we call prediabetes. Now, while conditions like PCOS are a big piece of the puzzle, they're not the only thing that can cause this. It turns out our day-to-day habits, especially how we sleep, play a huge and kind of surprising role. And look, the science here is incredibly direct. Not getting enough sleep doesn't just make you groggy. Research shows it can directly cause insulin resistance, which in turn seriously ups your risk for other metabolic diseases. So how in the world does that work? Well, when you don't get enough sleep, it sets off this whole hormonal domino effect. Your stress hormone, cortisol, shoots up. Leptin, the hormone that says, hey, you're full, it goes down. And ghrelin, the one that screams, I'm hungry, it goes way up. It's just a perfect storm for messing up your metabolism. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty serious, but here's the most important part of this whole story. This is not a one-way street. In most cases, you actually have the power to turn this ship around. And that's the really good news here. Insulin resistance and even prediabetes can often be stopped right in their tracks. A lot of the time, it can be completely reversed just by making some dedicated changes to your lifestyle.
And we are not talking about some tiny, insignificant effect here. A huge landmark study called the Diabetes Prevention Program showed that these lifestyle changes can have an absolutely massive impact. Get this. The study found that people who made these changes cut their risk of going from prediabetes to full-blown type 2 diabetes by an incredible 58%. 58. To put that in perspective, that's almost twice as effective as the leading medication.
So what were these miracle changes? You might be surprised. The two big goals were losing just a modest 7% of their body weight and getting 150 minutes of exercise a week. That's it. That's just a 30-minute walk 5 days a week. These are totally achievable goals.
So when you think about it, from a simple tape measure to how much sleep we get, our bodies are constantly sending us signals. They're usually quiet, easy to ignore, but they hold such crucial information about our health. The only question left is, are we listening?